Alright, what is going on, you guys? This is Erica's for the win. Let's talk about The Messenger. I just beat this game a few days ago, put in about 20 hours, and about 300 deaths. The reason I know that is because this little guy right here kept reminding me. Every time I would die, he mocks me, he puts me down a bit, makes fun of me, and also keeps track of the death count. So yeah, I'm sure you can guess, this game has a lot of challenge. It's difficult, and you are gonna die a lot. And that's really part of the experience and what makes The Messenger so great. You guys know I love difficult games, especially when they're made so well. The platforming in this game is top-notch. And just by looking at it, you can see that it has this retro style about it. It's very nostalgic. It plays on the games that we used to play when we were growing up. It really has that influence here, but it doesn't feel dated, it doesn't feel clunky, it does everything so well as far as it feeling fluid and feeling updated and new, even though this is something that we've seen before. What makes this game so unique is the switching between 8-bit and 16-bit, and it's a part of a time travel that plays into the story, and it's actually necessary to get through the game. It's not just there to be there. It's not just some nostalgic carrot that's dangled in front of you just because. It's actually something that you have to do in order to progress, and it actually makes sense within the story. About midway through the game, you're able to switch between the two 8-bit and 16-bit, and the music actually changes with it, which is really awesome. I wanted to mention the music, of course, because it's got that retro style, but depending on whether you're 8-bit or 16-bit, it changes. And also when you're underwater, it changes as well. So it's really cool details like that stand out in The Messenger, and I wanted to point those out. But like I said, about midway through the game, you're able to use this feature of switching between 8-bit and 16-bit as part of a time travel in order to go back to the world and explore new areas. You see, what happens with The Messenger is it starts off as a linear Ninja Gaiden-ish action game where you just go through areas, you fight bosses, and then you move on to the next area. What happens about midway and when you start to use the Switch is it becomes a Metroidvania. And at first, I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit disappointed with this. Even though I like Metroidvania games, I felt like this really kind of slowed down the pace. It went from this action, fast, linear experience to a methodical, backtracking, I gotta find out what to even do, where's the bosses experience. It just sort of slowed everything down, and this can be off-putting. I even searched out some other reviews just to see if anyone agreed with me, and a lot of people did. They said it started very strong, and then the pacing just sort of fell off. And then it picks up again. And I completely agree. That's what happened with my experience. I had to just sort of push through those initial feelings of the pacing falling off and just feeling a bit disappointed. And I just had to kind of figure out what to do. And then once I did, it started to click again. So that was definitely my experience with The Messenger. It's essentially two games in one. If you saw this on paper, you would think, what are the devs thinking? This is kind of crazy. But in the end, when I look back on all of it, I could see why they did it. You know, it makes the game longer, and it also worked. You know, it actually made it work. So I want to give kudos to the developers for being gutsy about this. I feel like that was a gutsy move. And even though some people find it as a negative, myself included, it's still an excellent game overall. And a major reason why it's so good is the challenge of the game, and the platforming, as I said, is top-notch, and it has almost everything to do with it. The enemies in the game, they're not very hard. Most of them are one-hit kills, but the placement of the enemies and the platforming that surrounds them is what really brings on the challenge for the game. On top of that, you have some mechanics that you have to use, such as the cloud jump, which is essentially a double jump. What you have to do is jump, hit an enemy, and then jump again off of that enemy. And if you don't execute this very well, it can really be your demise. Something else that adds to the challenge is that the enemies respawn once you revisit that screen. So if you're moving up platforms or left to right, and you happen to fall or you just backtrack to the previous screen, those enemies will be back. And that could really hurt you, especially if they're just in the wrong place at the wrong time or you're just not expecting it. It can kill you. Another thing that you can use is the rope, which is pretty much like a grappling hook, and I really loved this. It saved me many, many times. You're able to use this to attach to walls and also enemies. You can jump off of them and continue your cloud step, or you can just use it to take them out. The rope really comes in handy. There's also some ninja stars that come in handy as well for enemies that are just out of reach or they're throwing projectiles and you want to just throw one back. That's really fun to use. But other than that, there's just a basic ability tree where you can improve your health, how much damage you do, how much damage you take, and that is something you can upgrade by currency that you find throughout your playthrough. As far as the boss fights go, I really enjoyed them, with the exception of one. There was one that was just really boring, and it took forever to kill him. But other than that, they were all pretty good. And some of them even had some serious influence of bosses that I've played in the past, and that I really enjoyed. As far as the difficulty, they weren't too bad. There was a few that gave me some problems, but for the most part, the rest of them I caught on really quick, and I knew what to do, and it just took a few tries to take them down. And I also really liked how they fit the part of the area they're in. Like, for example, there's a hellish kind of part where you go down under and then you have like a devil kind of boss, you know, who throws fire and stuff like that. So I really enjoyed that. That's something that, you know, I appreciate in games still. Even though that's been done before, obviously, I still appreciate that. And the levels themselves, of course, do this as well. There's an ice level where you slide everywhere because there's just ice below your feet. And you can also grab onto snow that only lasts for like a second or two and you have to jump off immediately. This can make for some really cool double jumping and cloud stepping. And, you know, once you get in the flow, you can really move through these areas. So yeah, overall, The Messenger, if you played these types of games in the past, you've played the retro games, you've played the Contras, the Ninja Gaidens, and even in most recent memory, the Cupheads, you know, the games like that, you're gonna enjoy this one. The nostalgia factor is definitely there, but as I was saying, it feels updated and it feels very fluid and nice. It's not clunky at all. And then the music, of course, is just so good. The first track from the first level just has been in my head for like a week. It just stays there. It's very catchy, and you know, it changes with the 8-bit and the 16-bit, which makes it even better. So yeah, I really enjoyed those things about the game, just how it looks, how it sounds, and how it just feels like something new, even though it's so familiar. The checkpoints are also very generous, so you don't ever really feel like they're abusing your time or abusing the challenge factor. I feel like the devs knew the kind of game they were making, and they really knew how to go about it. There's a good chunk of gameplay between the checkpoints, but it's never to the point where you feel like, damn, I have to do all that over again just because I died. Like, it's never to that point where it feels impossible or unfair. I feel like the checkpoints were really nicely placed to where you feel that sense of relief, but you also feel like you could do it over again if you had to, and it's not overwhelming. So kudos to the developers on that. They really knew the kind of game they were making and the challenge they were going for. They didn't really abuse it and try and make it like a Soulsborne, like where you have to start all the way over from some long ago checkpoint. They really balanced it, in my opinion. So that to me makes it even more accessible for newcomers or just anybody really. Even if you've played these games before, it never becomes too overwhelming, like all your hard work goes for nothing. It's like there's perfect amounts of gameplay between the checkpoints. The learning curve is there, the controls are great, you're not going to be frustrated because of bad controls. That is something I can guarantee you. I would take it with a huge grain of salt if anyone ever says the controls are bad in The Messenger. I really would, because for me, they were so responsive, smooth, and the gameplay just flowed. And if I ever died, it was really my fault. I never had a feeling of the game gypping me or being unfair or the controls being terrible to where it made me die. That never happened, really. It was always my fault. It was because I was sloppy, didn't execute properly, or just hit the wrong button, or whatever the case. Usually my fault. So yeah, The Messenger, a smooth experience that plays with your nostalgic heartstrings in such a good way. The music, the look, the feel, it's like you're back in time. Literally, pun intended, with the game. It's like going back in time through the story and everything. But also your experience as well. It's like you're going back in time and having that nostalgia, but it feels so updated and new at the same time. It's a very fresh experience. So yeah, I highly recommend this game to anyone. Once again, I want to thank Unforgiven for gifting me the game. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Let me know what you think of The Messenger in the comments section. I'll be looking forward to your guys' responses. And until my next video, you guys take care, and I will talk to you later. Bye.